Okay, welcome back. This makes me wonder who might be watching this video and what year it might be. Today's August 23rd, 2024. My nephew TJ's down here from St. Louis. He's a videographer and he's helping me shoot these videos, which is just a great contribution. Thank you, TJ. And I was telling him yesterday he's the perfect person to do this filming, not only because of quality of work, but because of his integration with the family. And you'll hear his voice from time to time pop in, asking me questions or prompts, because he knows a lot of this story. And so as you saw in maybe previous video segments, when he asked some more penetrating questions, was helpful. So anyway, great and fun to do this with you, TJ. Well, as in terms of recording, this is the fourth session. Today will be a long day of recording. We're going to record a lot of sessions because we got a lot to cover and he's leaving tomorrow. So I've worked hard to outline all this stuff and telling our story, and we'll just kind of continue to see how it goes. Yesterday was a lot of fun. At least I'm having fun. But before we get too far down the storyline, I want to back up just a little bit. I found a document I had written, or letter, I guess, and I want to call it a tribute to Nana. This might be most meaningful really to my siblings in a sense, because we co-experienced this. Okay, Nana was who we called, that was our grandma on our mother's side. Her name was Mary Licata. That was my mother's name as well. I had the same name, Mary Licata. My mother became Mary Ingrassia, of course. But I mentioned previously that Nana, my mom was born and raised in DuQuoin, Illinois, 100 miles from St. Louis. And Nana lived there her whole life. Her husband, Antonio, died when I was only 2 in 1955. She lived a widow the whole rest of her life in DuQuoin, in that same house on, what the heck?
Linden Street.
Linden Street, thank you. 326 North Linden Street. See, TJ, that's why you're the right person. So yeah, and I don't think I've mentioned so far as a group, but my siblings, okay, I'm the oldest of what was 7, and born in 1953. Candy and Mary were a set of twins, came 2 years later. Mary passed away because they were premature. She just couldn't make it. And so my mom at age 21 lost a child, big deal. We did, at my mother's funeral, which I'll include probably in my Storyworth book, the tribute to her, a message I spoke at her funeral, but realized at the time when we did the genealogy, went back in the genealogy or the time, my mother lost her father earlier that same year. So when she was like 21, 22-ish, her father died and she lost a child in the same year. That's a lot of loss for a woman to process.
And then her mother and her husband died 2 months to the day in 2002.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Her mother and my dad died 2 months apart, and she had another year with 2 huge losses in her life. So she went through a lot. So anyway, yeah, so she lost Mary. My brother Tony was born then next. It was like there was 3 of us. It was Sam, Candy, Tony. There's pictures of the 3 of us. It's kind of a set. Then was a gap for a number of years, and then came along Mary Kay.
What's the gap?
And I'm afraid you was going to ask. I'm not sure how long the gap was. I just don't know.
3 years, 4 years?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a gap. I mean, it was almost having 2 sets of 3s, It might have been a 4-year gap, something like that. So Mary Kay was born. I remember her birthday, it always rings out to me somehow. It was March 5th. Candy's born on September 26th. Tony, June 26th. Stephen is the same birthday as my dad, August 20th. No, he had the same birthday as my mom, August 13th. And Julie's going to want to kill me because I'm not going to remember her birth date off the top of my head when she was the baby. So Mary Kay, Stephen, and Julie were the second set of the 6 kids. Anyway, a tribute to Nana and a little anecdotal story. It came to me just this morning, getting prepared for this. Nana and both her parents was Leonardo Pizzolatto and Antonio Salvaggio. They were both born, her parents were born in the town of Poggioreale, something like that, Poggioreale, Sicily. They were born in 1880 and 1883, her parents.
There's 5 years between my dad and Mary Kay, by the way.
5 years.
I just texted Mary Kay.
Oh, excellent. Oh, she's on standby. Good. By the way, we called Nana, right? Grandma Nana, and her mother was Big Nana. And they had a little market, grocery store right around the corner from Nana's house in DuQuoin. We used to go to that little store as kids. It was a lot of fun. Candy would tell the story. They had a little glass counter that had candy in it, so we thought it was cool because we'd just go in there and get whatever candy we wanted. And my mother had a brother named Jack Licata. That was her only sibling. My father had only one sibling as well, Catherine Ingrassia, who we call affectionately always known as Cookie all these years. And Cookie's still with us today, although at the time of this recording, she's also struggling from a bone marrow disease, as similar as Vicky. They have different diseases, but they both have a bone marrow-related malady. So Cookie is 79 at this recording. She's 8 years older than me. I'm 71. So get this. I don't know the year, but Leonardo, my grandpa or great-grandpa, and his wife are immigrating to America. They ride a boat. I don't remember the name of that boat. Can you imagine a boat across the Atlantic Ocean from Sicily to New York City? And they're coming with their children. So my grandma, Nana's one. She had a sister named Lena, Aunt Lena. She married a guy named Pete Biondo, so it was Lena Biondo. But here's what the story.
But different Aunt Lena. There was an Aunt Lena on the other side.
Yeah, there was
as
an
well.
Aunt Lena on my dad's side too. One of my grandpa's sisters, the other grandpa. So, but they get to Ellis Island in New York City, and guess what? They're I don't know how it was, but they're going through some kind of line, and there's a medical checkup, right? And the story was told Aunt Lena had a problem with her eye, like her eye was infected or something was up. So the medical personnel at Ellis Island was like, hold on here. You can't come in to America. It's like, so they put her in quarantine. Nana used to say they put him in quarantine. And they were waiting to see a few days, I don't know how many, if that eye was going to clear up. Because I guess they wouldn't let her in with some kind of disease, for all they knew back then. So that had to be the early 1900s. So the story was, of course, that eye infection obviously cleared up. They let her come in. But our existence, family, was hanging on Aunt Lena's eye infection. Because if they don't come into America, everything changes. Everybody fades off of the photo. That's just kind of a crazy anecdotal story, but not only does every decision that you make matter, just circumstances and how life is driven matters. If her eye infection don't clear up, we don't exist. So thank God in retrospect for that. I'm going to tell these stories as a tribute to Nana, and it was she passed on February 22nd, 2002. Again, just 2 months to the day before my dad actually passed away of a heart attack. At the time of this tribute, here's what happened. Nana passed away. She had been just getting increasingly sick, and she passed away at 80 years old. I was checking this out. She was born in 1902, died in 2002, right? So she was 80.
No, that's not right.
What do you mean?
If she was born in 1902 and she died in 2002, that'd be 100. But Nana was 90-something when she died.
Yeah,
So something's not right.
No, that'd be, yeah.
I think she made it to 95
Yeah,
or...
Yeah, I thought she was early 90s too. This is Tommy Gibraltaro's work on, so he's got something messed up, because that would be 100 years old. She wasn't 100.
Do you know how old Nana was when Meemaw was born? Because Meemaw was born in 33, so we can do the math backwards.
I don't. Yeah, Meemaw was born in 33. Well, anyway. But yeah, she was in, I think she was in the early 90s, like 93 or something when she passed. So anyway, when she finally passed away, I was in California doing a training for Global Missions Fellowship, and Vicky, Gigi, and your mom, Sherry, were in Romania together. And this comes later in the story, but we did over 17 years of mission work going back and forth to Romania, taking mission teams to Eastern Romania, and got other family members involved. And Vicky at the time did her own trips from time to time.
They did a lot of stuff with orphanages.
Yeah, they were doing some orphanage work. There was an orphanage that had special needs kids in it. Another whole big story. We worked in Slovakia. I'm sure that's where they were, southeast Romania. So they were in Romania. I was in California. None of us could go to the funeral because all of a sudden we had this funeral in DuQuoin. Tina, my oldest daughter, Christina, had a passion. She says, I'm going to that funeral, you know. And she did. She drove from Dallas to St. Louis. And I wrote this letter in California when I was there at that training, and emailed it to Tina and asked her if she would read it at the funeral on my behalf, which she presumably, I think, started to do and couldn't get through it. And I believe Miriam came up, Candy's oldest daughter, came up and, if I'm not mistaken, finished it, because Tina, for emotion, couldn't get through it. By the way, Tina tells a story related to that visit to DuQuoin for that Nana's funeral. She had a hotel room. My mom and dad had a hotel room. They, were staying. And so she was getting ready to drive back to Dallas after everything. And she tells a story that early in the morning, there was a knock, on her hotel room door. She's like, who's knocking on my... And it was my dad. Peepaw was her grandpa, Peepaw, and she says he thanked her for coming. He was so blessed and encouraged that she drove all the way from Dallas to come. So he thanked her, and he gave her some money for gas. And she goes, oh, I don't want to take it. And he goes, oh no, you're going to take this money. And of course she did, and he wanted to help her that way, which was very sweet. And that was endearing to Tina. Excuse me, but what was most endearing about it was, she'll tell you, she then left after that. That was the last time she saw him alive, when he gave her that gas money and thanked her for coming to. It was a sweet memory, because 2 months later, he died of a heart attack on April 22nd. So last memory for Tina to see Papa was alive there in DuQuoin at that other funeral, and he gave her that money. You can ask Tina about that, depending on when you're listening to this.
Tina might be long gone by the time
Tina might be gone if somebody's listening to this. Who knows?
That means you're way long gone.
I'll be way long gone. Thanks, TJ, for the encouragement. So I might kind of read some of this, but I'll talk through it too. So as best I can remember, as a young boy, I was, and all of our siblings that are already listed, we were always happy to hear, man, we're going to DuQuoin, to visit Nana. And Nana lived at 326 North Linden Street, and that place just had a mystique about it. That's all there is to it, I can tell you. Here's a picture of Nana, okay, and holding my hand. I guess I don't know, I got to be 1.5, 2 years old here. Looks like I'm walking maybe. So I'm a couple years old. There's no date on it. And that's that house on Linden Street that she lived in as a widow all those years. So there's a picture of her holding me. And then here's a kind of another classic. This is my mom with Nana, her mom, holding me. So there you go, 3 generations in a shot right there. And that looks like that was taken on Wells Avenue. I can tell by the housing in the background. So when I was born, that's where they were first living before they went to Southway Market, and we lived in that apartment on top of the store. Here's just throwing this in, but this was on the other side of the family that's just found this picture. Here's another grandma or great grandma holding me. You see, this was a generation back. This is Leonardo Gibaltera. This is Grandma Ingrassia's mother, my dad's mom's mom. And she's holding me, her great-grandson, in this picture. And I can remember her. She lived with Grandma and Grandpa for a while there. And I can remember her sewing patches on our jeans, because we'd tear these jeans and she'd sew patches on them. And all those Italian women were into sewing, it seemed. And there she is. And I can remember seeing her. Like I said in that first video, I saw with my eyes 5 of my great-grandparents. So, you know, as grandchildren, it was a journey to a place apart from the normal, to go to DuQuoin, a special place. We could see our cousins, you know, Tony, Faye, and Carolyn were the children of Uncle Jack and Aunt Betty. Uncle Jack was my mom's only sibling. They lived in DuQuoin. And although riding in a crowded car, they got all these kids piled in a car, not like an SUV or anything like that.
And they didn't have seat belts and car seats.
No seat belts, no car seats. You could stand on the hump in the back of the seat, you know, and God forbid there's accidents, people would have been flying everywhere, I guess, but there was no seatbelts or anything. And so we'd ride for 2 hours, which seemed forever, of course, in the car, and we're kind of, are we there yet? Or how much longer are we going to be there? You don't know all that. Oh, my goodness. So our hearts would rise. Sorry about this. Too much talking when you're here, TJ. Our hearts would rise with expectation when we would see we're at the town Pinckneyville. Because if we got to Pinckneyville, the next town is DuQuoin. So we're traveling these asphalt roads, you know.
By the way, just side story, did you know that my grandpa was originally from Pinckneyville?
I never remember that now. So that was on...
my mom's dad.
Your mom... Oh, is that right? What was his name?
Brady.
Brady
Jackson.
was from Pinckneyville.
Mm-hmm. Or his family, and I forget exactly, but there is a Pinckneyville connection on
How about
that.
that? So we're traveling these little asphalt roads, you know, across southern Illinois back in the day, and we get to Pinckneyville, and we knew. And guess what? Between Pinckneyville and DuQuoin, there was a Dairy Queen. Yeah, Dairy Queen existed back then, still today, at least today. And our anticipation, our hope, our silent hope would be, or whispering in the back, say, let's stop at Dairy Queen, let's stop at Dairy Queen. Because we never knew if people would decide to stop at Dairy Queen, you know, and there were times he did and times he didn't. And that's just it was. We wouldn't dare ask, you know what I mean? Like today, it would be, hey, let's not, you know, the kids just, we kind of just didn't even ask. We just kind of hoped. And sometimes we got to get some creamy Dairy Queen on the way to DuQuoin. So we'd arrive, you know, and agree to kiss Nana, run to the refrigerator, like I said, to get those yellow macrame cups full of chocolate pudding. And we knew it was always waiting for us, chilled in the fridge. So just scores of memories. Again, my siblings would resonate with all this. There was a huge tree in front of Nana's house. We used to make a game of trying to go around the base of that tree, stepping only on the big roots, that would come out of the base of that tree. There was a swing on the front porch. And that was the deal. When Nana passed away, I think Julie has ended up with that swing. I'm pretty sure. Does that sound right to you?
I think so.
Yeah. The swing that used to be on Nana's porch, I think my youngest sister Julie has it. Man, we used to sit on that swing, we were little kids and stuff, and just have a great time out there on that old porch. There was an old barn that used to be next to the house on a large lot. Later on, they knocked all that stuff down. They had a big lot next to her house. We used to play wiffle ball, and we used to play cork ball, kickball, all that stuff, town ball. There was something called town ball that had certain rules to it. And there was a well, a real well with water in it that had this rusted metal cover on top of it. And there was a wooden pump back in the day. And you could pump that thing, and finally the water would come shooting out of that well. There was a metal barrel outside of the house there for burning the trash. Burn the trash, which means there wasn't a pickup of garbage back in the day. So all your trash, you didn't put it out to the street for the garbage man to come get. You put it in the barrel. And they would light that barrel on fire. And we just thought that was the coolest thing, burning the trash, because in Hazelwood, we did put out the trash, we lived in the suburbs. That was like country living in DuQuoin. We'd scatter a bunch of blankets across Nana's living room floor, and we'd camp out, man. That was our bedroom, that big living room. There was a fold-out couch. My mom and dad would sleep on that couch, and all these kids are scattered across blankets across the living room. And I can remember hearing that old clock ticking, just and everything was quiet, and we'd try to go to sleep. It was like an indoor camp out in DuQuoin. You probably did some of that, maybe even, right? Nana always had a pile of magazines that she would regularly read, that she would get, and they'd stay up on current events, so supposedly, but she really liked the National Enquirer, the Reliable Enquirer. And for some reason, she called it the book. She'd say, it says it right here in the book. Well, the National Enquirer, how would you describe it? It was
It's a tabloid,
there you go.
Aliens landing and Bat Boy and crazy conspiracy. It's not real.
Tabloid fake news.
I don't know how it was back in the 50s. Maybe it was different back then.
Oh no, it had a reputation even then, and we'd make fun of her because she read the National Enquirer. We could walk to that Dairy Queen from her house. By the way, which was awesome. And we could take a shortcut through the alley behind Nana's house. It's just surreal stuff, man. We'd play in her kitchen with pots and pans and stuff, and we'd pretend like we were the Dairy Queen, all these little kids. And we'd pretend like there was a rush of customers, and we would bang around, knock everything all over the place, trash her whole kitchen. She didn't care. These grandkids having a lot of fun. She had a back room off of that house, which had a unique smell to it. I can tell with all this old stuff, and it was being like an antiques, of just junk, but a lot of cool things. When she passed away, we emptied out that back room, there was a shotgun in that back room your dad got that belonged to our grandpa, Antonio, who Tony never met. He passed when I was 2. And that shotgun was just dilapidated. I don't know, it was like destroyed. I think it was even broke or something. Your dad had the whole thing redone. He paid to get the whole thing redone. And I think he ended up actually using that gun to shoot some turkeys.
I think so.
Does that sound right? So he's got our grandpa's shotgun, and we could play in that back room. It had this old metal stove in it, a standing chest of drawers, blankets, zillions of other things, and you know. Then there was the basement, but the basement was, wow, not like a sort of a modern basement. It was like a dugout
More like a cellar?
Yeah, that's right. That'd be a better word. It's more like a cellar. And you know what was down there? That house at one point was coal heated. So there was coal down there. There was a chute, and they would dump coal, and they go down and shovel coal into the furnace, and that was in the basement. And that's how that house had air driven somehow from that coal furnace. And can you imagine that pile of coal in the cellar, and that's how the house was heated. Later on, she got a gas furnace. You know, that was a big deal. I don't know if she ever had air conditioning in that house, by the way. She might have, I don't know. So it's like I said, Big Nana and great grandpa Pizzolato, Leo Pizzolato, they used to say, "Hey Leo, do you pizzoletto or you pizzolato?" Oh man. And they had that corner store with a wooden candy case and the glass door. We thought it was a great privilege to go there to get candy without having to pay, you know. We played corkball games, used the barn as a backstop, town ball, wiffle ball out on the street, picnics, fishing for bluegill with worms on cane poles at the DuQuoin fairgrounds. And speaking of the fairgrounds, that was a great summer event, the DuQuoin State Fair. Right at the end of the summer, it ended on Labor Day. We would always go. That was oftentimes was our vacation. Dad would take vacation. We'd go to DuQuoin. We'd go to the fair. We'd so look forward to that. But like I said, it was always the last event of the summer. After the fair, back to Hazelwood, back to school, you know. They had a midway of rides, and they had the Hamiltonian horse racing, which was buggy horse racing. It was the home of the Hamiltonian. That was a big deal back then. But they also had a dirt track, a mile dirt track for stock car racing, big car racing. We used to see A.J. Foyt, Mario Andretti. These are famous car drivers back in the day. We actually saw those guys drive on that dirt track. It was so exciting. And Fiddlesticks, that's a white ice cream covered with chocolate and rolled in nuts. And they had evening shows there. There used to be a singer named Andy Williams. Meemaw loved Andy Williams. He was one of these crooners, you know, singing away.
And she saw him.
And we saw him. I remember that. He was there at the fair. He was putting on an evening show, which they went to that show. But we were walking around the fairgrounds, and all of a sudden a car was coming down the road there, and Andy Williams was in the car, and Mom was a phenom of Andy. She's like, and she starts yelling, "Andy, Andy, Andy!" And he turned around and went, "Hey," you know, and he waved at her, and she was just like, thought that was the coolest thing, you know. Funny thing is, I never can remember Nana going with us to the fairgrounds. She just, I don't know what the deal was. It was just too much for her, maybe. She was the grandma, and probably she was cooking for us anyway. She didn't care to go do all that stuff. Just to go have fun and come back, and she'd be ready for us back at home. She'd say, "I'm not going to that crazy fair."
I can hear her saying that.
Can't you hear her saying that?
Maybe you're going to get to this, but you had said yesterday she never had a driver's license.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna get there. I'll get there.
Well, but the thing is, so we talk about that when you get there. But how much did she ever leave that house? Did she have a social? You know, she went and played cards with the other ladies, or she pretty much just stayed in that house almost all the time.
Dude, yeah. Now that you mention it, I guess that's true. I don't know. Yeah, she didn't do anything that I knew of. Uncle Jack lived in town, her only son. He kind of took care of her. That was like his job in life. And at that Italian culture, the son takes care of the mother. That's the way it is. And this is about the only bad thing I had to say about Nana. She wasn't very thankful to him about it. It seemed like it was his duty. He was just doing his duty. And she was an interesting character, She's very loving, but to us as grandkids, but she's kind of, I don't know, she's a little bit tough maybe. But she lived as a widow all those years. She lived on the puncheon from the black lung and the pension. She lived like a pauper in some sense. God, she never bought any clothes. My mother would say, buy some, let us buy you things, and Uncle Jack. But that was one of his deals, man. He did take care of her. And I guess he didn't even expect to be thanked. He was just doing his duty. He was a loyal guy, man. A great guy. So, we realized that Nana had a lot of suffering in her life, really. The bulk of her life was lived without so many of the creature comforts we take for granted today. I mean, she didn't have any of the amenities of a, dishwasher and, golly, back in the day, even an automatic washing machine and, oh, golly. So they just lived in that house since they were married, and she lived there her whole life. Let's see. I mentioned on the other video that he was a miner. He worked in the coal mines, her husband, then he, of course, passed away. She had the miner pension and the black lung benefit. The government actually had provided a financial benefit to all those men who could be verified that they died of the black lung. And that's what had happened to him. As far as I know, she never remotely entertained remarriage, not even for 1 second. And we used to tease her when we were kids because there was a guy who lived, an old guy who lived in the house next door, and his name was Mr. Overteeny. And he was like a recluse guy. You'd hardly ever see him. It was almost like in To Kill a Mockingbird, Boo Radley, if you know that story, this recluse, mysterious guy. We'd see him from time to time. We'd say, hey, Nana, you need to give Mr. Overteeny, and she'd go, shit. I don't want no man, she said. So Nana had more surgeries and more illnesses than I can remember. I mean, one very serious event was when, I don't know what year it was, she's cooking there, she's all rag of a robe. Her robe caught fire at the gas stove. And all of a sudden, I mean, nobody was there but her. But she knew enough. Can you imagine, Nana? Stop, drop, and roll, baby. She rolled around somehow in that robe, they said, and she got the fire put out. But you know what? It somehow extinguished, but she got burned really bad. And that turned out to be a long stay in the hospital. And what happened was, in DuQuoin, they could not manage her. So they took her to St. Louis from the hospital in DuQuoin. But the amazing thing was they took her by helicopter. Now, what's interesting about, Nana was not flashy, not fashionable, not modern, sharp as a tack mentally till very late in life. She was just from that other former generation, man. And listen, she never had a driver's license. Nana never drove a car. She never flew in an airplane. But guess what? She did something a lot of us haven't done. She flew in a helicopter. And after she was in, as a result of those burns, she actually had a heart attack along with it. And when they decided, we got to get this lady to St. Louis, they took her by helicopter. And she later, remember my dad telling that story because they were there at the hospital when she arrived, and she came in by helicopter, and she said that she liked it. She loved it. She liked flying in that helicopter. And that was one of the only crazy things I guess she did. Through that illness, she actually got a disease called Guillain-Barré. So because of the burns and being burned is a horrific thing, and healing from burns. This was late in life. This is this old lady in her 80s probably by that time, maybe late 70s, 80s when she got burned. And we didn't think she was going to make it there for a while. And that Guillain-Barré actually paralyzes you. And it starts like in your legs, and it kind of creeps up your body. It's a weird thing. And she suffered from that for a while. And then thankfully it began to fade away. So Nana's quality of life has suffered in recent years, and a lot in the recent months before she got later on in life after the burns and all that, got sicker and had a lot of different issues. And turns out, in early 2002, she was declining, and we were praying the Lord would take her home gently, of course. Nicole, my second daughter, called me on Friday morning, February 22nd, and to tell me Nana had slipped into eternity. Nicole was crying on the phone. I was in California, as I said. Vicky was in Romania with your mom. And I don't think at the time when I was writing this note, it kind of was surreal that Nana was gone. I was in California. I couldn't get to the funeral, and that's when I wrote what I'm kind of speaking to you off of right now, was a letter that Tina tried to read there at the funeral. So yeah, hey, a lot of memories with DuQuoin and Nana. I wanted to give a segment of this legacy videos to that. Nana was a great, had a great place in all of our lives. Just surreal, wonderful role. And when I wrote this, I did put a little bit of a thank you and tribute to Uncle Jack that I said to him. I want to say that you modeled endurance and commitment and love, almost like nothing I'd ever seen, as you faithfully cared for Nana over the years. It surely was not easy to persevere. It was often a thankless, unnoticed task. It has been very demanding and difficult. Yet I have never seen nor heard you in self-pity or bitterness or complaint, really. So thanking Uncle Jack for his example of sacrifice and service to taking care of his mom. So that's the letter that, or tribute that I wrote that was sent to Nana's funeral with all those memories in it. And again, speaking on behalf of my siblings, really, that great season of life, the good old days, right?
Okay, Nana died in 2002, but you weren't there for the funeral because you're in California. We went to DuQuoin to bury Meemaw in 2000. When was the last time? How
2020.
long? 2020. When was the last time you had been back to DuQuoin? Had it been decades or?
It had been a long time, because what happened is once Vicky and I got married and we left St. Louis, we went to Florida. We're going to get to that in the next videos soon. Our life went into Florida. I went to Florida Bible College. I became a teacher there. From there, we went to New Jersey. I was a pastor. So after that, we never were coming back to St. Louis at that time. So I had not been to, I don't even know, I can't remember when the last time I would have seen Nana, or that we would have been to DuQuoin, because we had our own kids. We were living far away. When we came back, I guess what I would say is, now I'm thinking, we would come back to St. Louis.
You guys would come back in the summers. I can't remember if we would all go down there.
Yeah, we would. I remember we would go down there. There were a number of different times that we'd go to see Nana. I mean, we'd let her see these great grandkids. On my computer, I don't know if let's see, you'd be able to see this or not.
Well, I'll put it up on screen.
Well, it's anyway, but just to say, I pulled this up looking for some Nana stuff. That's a picture of Nana. Okay, now she wasn't even looking at the camera, but this snap was that this is a Christmas time.
That's at my house.
Is that right?
On Tucson.
Yeah.
1223.
That's right. There you go. So she must have been in St. Louis. And no, I don't think this was a Christmas. These kids are all in shorts and stuff. So that must have been a summer trip that we came back to St. Louis, and Nana must have been visiting at the same time. We arranged that.
Is that Haley on the left next to Daniel?
Let's see here. Whoops. Yeah, that's Tony Licata, Tony and Susan Licata. That's Uncle Jack's son. That's Haley, their only daughter, their only child. And then that's the scattering all those grandkids that were Nana. That's Tina Nicole. There's Stephanie with her hand posed, of course. There's Miriam and Abby and Jonathan. Look at the little, Mary's actually holding Jonathan. So that's Candy's kids. And golly, there's Marshall down over here. That was Stephen's kid with his first wife, Kelly. So look here, there you are, TJ. What kind of a look is that on your face? Andy, missing some teeth. And, well, guess what? At this time, maybe Sammy wasn't even born.
No, I probably was, I'm guessing I'm 7 or 8 there, so that's probably 1993, give or take.
Okay, 1993, that's the year we moved to Dallas. You know what this might be? You know what this probably was? This is once we left New Jersey, we're moving to Dallas, and we drove through St. Louis and spent time. And we moved down here in March. No. Wait. Yeah, we got down here, I think, in March that year. Closed on our house at Serenade April 1st. Yeah, this could be a March trip.
Haley and Daniel are wearing like sweaters and long pants. It's probably not the summer. So yeah, that
might
makes
have been
sense.
the spring. I don't know. So anyway, and then at the time, Mary Kay's kids, that's Daniel. There's Philip.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell you, it's definitely
There's
not.
Ben.
It's not Christmas because in that right corner where the TV is on that picture, that's where the Christmas tree would go.
Tree would have been.
So this was not Christmas.
There you go. So, and Julie, if this is 1993, I don't know. Max and Cece obviously were not born this time. They're not.
Max was born
born
2002.
2 weeks after Peepaw died. He saw Max.
No, yeah, before. 2 weeks before.
He died.
Because there's a picture with
I thought
Peepaw and Meemaw with Max when, like, in the hospital, I think.
Yeah, that's what I meant. He did see Max, but right after that he passed.
Yeah.
And never saw Cece. So anyway, there's Nana with her grandchildren at the time. There was a bunch of them, right? Oh, here's one. Yeah, this is a good picture. Now, Nana ain't looking too good, but this is something. This lady was suffering and was getting old. So that's a great shot because of who's in it. That's the swing on the front porch at Linden Street, DuQuoin. That's my mom, of course, and that's Uncle Jack. Okay. So those are her 2 kids, and she ain't looking too good there, but she was struggling with a lot of health issues. But yeah, that's a classic shot because it's sitting on the swing on the front porch. That swing's been redone and is hanging in Julie's house somewhere, I guess. By the way, I made a mistake on there. That's Nana with her great-grandchildren, not grandchildren. We're her grandchildren. That was her great-grandchildren. So she had a bunch of them. Anyway, you think anything else?
I think that covers it.
Well, there's another one. See, she was ailing. That's my mom with her, helping out Nana. So, again, for you kids, Lila, Cedar, and Brody, presumably watching this, that's Meemaw's your great-grandmother. Nana's your great-great-grandmother. Through my side, through Meemaw.